We are here today to talk about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Mutant Mayhem, and we're going to learn a little bit about how the film was made from people who actually worked on it, from some friends who have stopped by today, and I'll introduce them to you in a minute. First, I just want to give a shout out. My name is Scott Claus. I am someone who's worked in animation for a long time, but it's been a part of my life forever, ever since I can remember. And as I got older, I worked in 2D animation at places like Disney. You can see my credits, like Pocahontas, Hunchback, 2D films. And then I worked at DreamWorks on 2D films, all their 2D films like El Dorado, Prince of Egypt, Spirit, and Sinbad. Then I switched over to CG character animation, worked on Shark Tale and Flushed Away, and then got into creature effects at another studio where I worked on some really cool movies and ended with Life of Pi before I became a teacher. And now I'm the 2D, 3D animation manager at CG Spectrum. And speaking of which, that's kind of why we're here today. CG Spectrum is this fantastic school that is completely online, and we bring the industry to you, meaning you can stay wherever you are and still take classes from us. And we have classes in a wide variety of visual effects and digital arts based departments. And you should definitely check out our website if you want to know more. But we're a great company that will come to you and bring the industry to you with our mentors and with our interactive student communications. So check us out. Here are some of the departments that we do work in. As you can see, we have covered a vast majority of digital arts, from painting to visual effects, and then my personal specialty and favorite, which is 2D and 3D animation. And that's obviously what we're going to be talking about today. But again, check out cgspectrum.com if you want to know more, or feel free to ask us questions. We have people answering questions today. If you have questions about the school or anything on your mind, feel free to join in with the question chat and ask us, and we will get back to you. We're going to have a question and answer session at the end of today. And so go ahead and ask a question now or at any time, and we'll try to get back to you with that question. Either we'll give you an answer during the presentation or we'll do it at the end, but we will get to your questions. So just go ahead and fire them up and we'll get to them as we can. All right, so today I would like to introduce two of our guests, our friends who are here to talk about the movie Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Mutant Mayhem movie. The first one I'm going to introduce to you is actually one of our mentors. So if you are lucky enough, or if you make a special request, you could work with Ambre Maurin, who is a fantastic animation mentor, but also an animator in real life. And I'll let you tell us a little bit about yourself. How's it going, Ambre?
So yeah, hello. I'm good. Thank you, Scott. I'm very happy to be here to share the love of animation. So yes, I've been in this industry for 15 more and plus years. It makes me feel old, but hey, I still feel young inside because it's such a wonderful job, and I'm happy to do it every day. And I'm also a mentor at CG Spectrum since about 3 years, and I'm enjoying this so much as well. I've been loving seeing my students getting good and happy and getting, most of them get a job at the end. So that has been super, super rewarding. I work full-time in parallel as I am mentoring at CG Spectrum. Yeah, I worked on movies that have big names, but sometimes I've done little things on them like Avatar. I animate a helicopter in the background, but still my name is Ambre. But every experience is very good to take, and I had the chance to work on different kind of movies with different style, from stop motion to motion capture to 3D entirely, and 3D and 2D mix. So I'm very, very grateful for this. So yeah, this is me.
Great, thank you. Thanks for coming and talking to us today, and we're looking forward to finding out what your experience was like on the movie. Next up, we've got Neave Lifschitz. I hope I said your last name right.
You did. Well done. 10 points for Gryffindor.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your involvement in this film?
Yeah, for sure. So I joined Cinesite to work on TMNT just this year in January. So really just new, got a chance to work with Ambre, of course, which has been awesome, and the entire team, which is great. Before that, I wrapped on The Monkey King, which is out on Netflix on Friday, if you guys want to check it out. And before then, I was at Animal Logic working on DC League of Super Pets. And like Ambre said, worked on a ton of different projects, different styles, like TV shows, also in 2D, like Hotel Transylvania, the series, Pete the Cat, or more 3D shows like Dragon Prince, Rescue Riders, stuff like that. And then I also teach at a few nonprofits, such as Rise Up Animation and a bit at Women in Animation as well. Currently, I just teach at Anim School. Yeah, that's about it, I think. Excited to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, welcome. Thank you. And just before we move on, so you two, you didn't work directly together, or did you?
Yeah, we did.
You did.
I think Ambre was on a different team than mine. I didn't lead her team, but yeah, we all worked together.
Okay, great. So you're old friends.
Like, we're old friends.
Definitely.
I don't know you, but I worked on the same movie. No, you guys.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I actually talked about this webinar to Neave, and he was like, yes.
Right.
Yeah, I was so happy he wanted
Lucky enough to have you join us. Thank you. Thanks for coming all the way from Vancouver to join us for this. All right, so I just want to jump right in because I know a lot of people are curious about this. I'm even curious about this. When we looked at the trailer for this film, a lot of us, even people in the industry, said, that looks different. That looks like something new I haven't seen before. And I'm all about like new. I love old stuff. I love new stuff. I love motion graphics. But I looked at this and I went, that is new. That's something I haven't really seen before. And it's really cool looking. And obviously there's been Spider-Verse and there've been other films that are kind of pushing the envelope, even things like Arcane, but it's different. And so one thing that we all kind of want to know from people who are on the inside is, how was this film made? What was different about this film that you notice from working on more traditionally animated films? And maybe if you can talk about it from a point, somebody mentioned Peanuts, yeah, good. Maybe if you can talk about it from the standpoint of someone who may not even know what we're talking about when we're talking about like CG animation. What was this project like?
Yeah, for sure. So like, just to break it down a little bit, I know we talked about it before. The idea in 3D when you're animating is you're kind of using almost like a virtual puppet. So you can move around in 3D space and see your character and its environment in totality in 3D space. Whereas 2D, you have a flat image that you're painting or drawing on, of course. What's funny is at the end, it's always a 2D image, so it doesn't really matter. And so what this film and many of the others that you mentioned kind of did is kind of combined both techniques. So we would animate in 3D in our world space using Maya, as many people in the industry use. And then on top of that, we would use two-dimensional tools like pens, brushes, whatever it is, to add another layer of that. I think all of these movies that you've mentioned like have really, really interesting styles, of course. And I think it's kind of how you combine them and how you use them. And I think TMNT specifically used a lot of stuff from a lot of other departments to get the final look. A lot of them weren't even like Ambre and I's like kind of process. So whether it was done in comp or like effects, like different stuff like that, every shot, has its own unique requirements and challenges. So there were some where, a 2D effects artist would go in and use like a program like Toon Boom Harmony to create the effects. And then there's others where animators would hand draw lines on top of characters' faces, or to help create like speed lines on like on an attack or on a weapon or something like that. So the combination of all of those things for every single shot is kind of neat.
You mentioned a lot when we were talking before about the speed lines and things you would draw were actually in 3D space, right?
Yeah, that was very, very exciting. Reminding me of like doing some craft, because you're animating your character in 3D, but then you have, like we had that little freedom of adding some speed lines or expression lines, and I never experienced that before. And it was kind of recommended to draw with your left hand if you're right-handed, because they didn't want those lines to be, perfectly designed. And it was very hard, actually. I will like again and again and try, but I always wanted to do those perfect speed lines when my character was jumping or something. but you have to let go and, just find a child in yourself and just do those little lines. Obviously, they need to look good. But so yeah, you have your 3D animation, and on top we had this tool called PaintFX. And yeah, our team developed the tool a little bit better for us, and we were drawing on top of our animation in Maya, so in 3D, on some kind of plane that we could move around if we wanted. And yeah, if you look inside your Maya scene, you will see the little lines in 3D, like a little tube. Yeah. Right, Neave? That was just
Did you have any moving camera shots where you had to adjust them? Yeah, we had some issues with that, because that's what's strange about the combination is like it's a two-dimensional line supposedly on screen, but in our world, it was a three-dimensional object in a three-dimensional space. It's just, it was on a two-dimensional plane. So if your camera changed, those lines would get altered. So there was a lot of back and forth sometimes with like moving cameras. And often we would try to like finalize the lines on certain shots, like after animation's closer to being approved by the directors. Otherwise, it would be, quite challenging to keep going back and forth. And sometimes you would even have to animate that plane if you do have a camera that's moving.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what was fun as well is when, oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No.
When you open the scene with all the characters and the background, you will find those crafty elements within the decor, the background. So you will have, I don't know, like a car, and on the car you will see those little rough drawings on them. I have no idea how they did that. Like, it's totally magic, actually, even working on it. You're like, how? Huh? Like, amazing, really, really fun.
Well, you guys had mentioned this a little bit before when we were talking, but to what length did you have personal creativity when it came to this sort of thing with the speed lines and exaggeration? Did that come from the director, or did it come from a supervisor or the script, or how did that work out?
Neave, do you want to?
Sure. I felt like a lot of it came from the animators. Obviously, it was always like a discussion. I remember having a shot, one of the animators on my team wanted to use kind of like spider sense kind of thing, like kind of an homage to Spider-Verse. And in that case, the supervisor said like, oh, I don't think it fits for like this show style or something like that. But the animators were always like allowed to like pitch things and see how it went. Yes. Or sometimes, as I mentioned, like if there was an expression on a character, like a lot of tension in their face, then an animator was like, let's add like a bunch of lines. And sometimes it was just getting more creative of like, how do you want it to look, right? Because we had another one where it was an impact on a face, and someone decided to have like a tooth come out, as if like someone, which eventually they called it and said, oh, it's too violent, like we don't want that. But I just mean like we had a lot of freedom to bring forward those ideas, whether they approve them or not. But yeah, it was pretty interesting to see everyone do them a bit differently, which was cool. And for each character, stuff like that. But
yeah, I remember one of our colleagues, he had a shot with Splinter being quite mad at the bad guys, and he did that cloud that was like,
he did like clouds over his head.
That cloud that was animated, and I'm pretty sure he just offered the idea, and the director said yes. And I felt very free on that movie to suggest my ideas, and it's okay if they're not taken, and
of course.
It was very friendly overall, this production. The director knew all our names. He always made sure to mention our names when we were showing our shots. Like it was really a good experience.
And he still does on Twitter. Did you see?
Yeah,
he's always crediting his artists on Twitter, even on Mitchell's Machines. And then Kyler was also like an amazing director to work with. They were both co-directing. Yeah, for sure.
That's great. And I think it shows in a project when that much love goes into something. And I think that's part of what we were seeing too when we saw the initial trailers. Oh, this one looks like a lot of care went into it, but in a fun way. And so speaking of which, I want to talk a little bit about before this film, before you got on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Now, Ambre, I know you said that you were a fan from way back, and then I believe Neave, you said that you really. No,
I didn't really grow up with it. No.
No, yeah.
No.
But getting into this film, did you have like any talks or anything where you learned about the characters and you learned about the sort of the look and the feel of what they were trying to accomplish? What was it like, assuming you were a student and you don't know anything about this, what's it like to go onto a film like this and be dropped into it and then have to start working on it? How do they prep you, I guess, the question.
Well, you have to do a little bit of homework, obviously, about what you're going to work on. But I guess for me, it was easier because I grew up watching lots of cartoons, and it included the Ninja Turtles, and I knew who they were, each of their personalities, more or less, even if they have been like adapted to our century. I don't know, to our new generation. Not century. But yeah, of course, there is, when you work on a project, you have some kind of document where you, when you can read about every character, what are their specifications, because, for example, I think Donatello has the glasses and the headphones and, you know, all those things. It's still objects to move and it's part of his character. So sometimes he might adjust his glasses and you have the headphones around. So you need to learn about who you're going to deal with on your shots, because some react differently. And the voice, by the way, they were awesome. They were very great, like in English, because we animate in English. They were very dynamic and appropriate to each character. So they were really real teenagers, which makes it's perfect. Like you work it. In terms of like creativity, for me, it really inspired me. When I heard the voice, like I knew what to do, like it inspired me a lot. I know because I've been a teenager, so I don't know. But yeah, it was very well done. Like those voices were very well chosen, I think.
Yeah, I think for me, I mean, I obviously knew Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, maybe not as well as Ambre, didn't grow up on it, but I did some research on it like almost like 7-8 years ago when I moved to Canada and found out the studio that I was going to work for was just working on it. And so I did a bunch of research back then and then, you know, never thought about it since. I had just missed that project and I was bummed out about it. But then when I joined, I definitely spent a lot of time looking at older like TMNT adaptations, like whether it was like comics or like the TV shows. I actually think I first started with something not as old, which was the Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the 2D show and the movie. I think the animation and the story, like everything in that show is like incredible. So I just spent some time like drawing frames from the film and then collected like a bunch of reference of just like, how do these turtles look? Like, how do you make them look appealing? And also how do you pose them out with these shells and the accessories and the weapons and all that kind of stuff? To me, the personalities and the character, as Ambre mentioned, like really came from their performances. From what I've heard, they recorded themselves all together. So they were always with each other. That's why you get so much of that like back and forth kind of banter with them. And then, of course, the directors, like they knew exactly how they wanted them to act. And so when we would make an acting choice and it wasn't right, they would say, yeah, that's not right for Donnie. Yeah, we're not doing this for Donnie, you know, that kind of stuff. But you don't know about your characters fully until you get your first shot approved with your character. Like that's how I feel about it, you know, like and then by the time you get to know them, the project's over and then you're sad and you miss them, right?
Yes, it's true. Like that. It's so true.
So you spend all this time researching.
Now I know.
Now you know what to do with them. Yeah.
For number 2, maybe.
Yeah.
There will be. You bring up an interesting point that I experienced in my time as an animator. Well, still, I mean, I still do stuff where you get really close to these characters. For anyone who's never worked in animation, you know, you really start to feel like these characters are real, and then you realize they're real because you're breathing life into them. And that to me is one of the most satisfying and fun things about the whole process, and what makes me sad when a movie is over. But again, for somebody who doesn't do this for a living or wants to someday, was there ever a time when you guys were growing up when you were thinking, oh, I want to be an animator and I want to do that stuff too? And I'm wondering if you could talk just a little bit about how you did end up getting into the business, because I know a lot of people want to know that. And we'll just talk about this for a little bit. We'll get back to the turtles. But just
Ambre, go ahead.
It just reminds me of Yeah.
Well, for me, it started when I saw The Lion King at the cinema. I think I was 11 years old, and I was like, I want to do this. I didn't know what it meant, but I want to do this. And always been enjoying drawing. That was my thing, watching cartoons. And then little by little, I don't know, life kind of directed me to that new technology, which is 3D animation. And at that time, there were very little women. I think we were 2 in my class. So you have no idea how it brings me joy to see all those women working in the industry, and all my students. Like, I always have at least 1 or 2 women part of the class, and that makes me so happy. So yeah, that's how I didn't know anything about it, but it was getting closer to my dream, which I told you, Scott. I wanted to work at Disney. Since I saw The Lion King, it always made me dream. I always loved Disney. I always do. And I've been very lucky. I've been lucky enough to work on different projects throughout my career, and not Disney style, but different styles. And I feel very grateful, and I feel like I'm successful this way because I'm still happy doing this job. So yeah, that's how I went into animation. That's my story.
No, yeah, that's great. I love stories like that. What about you, Neave?
Oh, mine's much more boring, I guess. I did not watch a lot of animation growing up. Like, definitely a lot of films, like Lion King for sure. But I actually got into art after getting injured in sports. So when I was like 17, I had like a slight injury and I couldn't play sports at that time. I was like, okay, we've got to try something else. I was like, I went to a drawing class, and that's kind of where my love of art kind of started. And then I wanted to be practical, so I went to study graphic design. I was like, I'll do that. And then on the side, I'll do painting and drawing and illustration. That I actually wanted to be like a viz dev artist or a concept artist. And then I took an animation course in college, and they had us do like a very basic assignment, kind of like with the bouncing ball. And I just loved it. But I didn't think it was practical, so I didn't do anything with it at that point. And then after like 2-3 years, again, this was in Israel as well, like not a huge animation industry. So I just really didn't think it was that possible for me. But I decided I really liked it and I wanted to study it more. So I signed up to Animation Mentor, and that was really interesting. I had to wake up at like 4 a.m. for my classes because of the time zone difference, which was cool. And yeah, I just really, really liked it. You know, I learned Maya a bit in college, so it was a bit easier for me to transition from 2D to 3D. And then, yeah, that's kind of how I got into the studying of it. And then I just applied all over the world. And the best offer that I got at the time was in Canada. So I moved to Canada in 2017. And yeah, I've been animating and living in Canada since. So that's kind of how I got into it.
Nice. Now, one of the things that I always say in classes is animation isn't something you really learn from a book, even really learning it from videos, not necessarily. It's something that is kind of passed like a torch from one person to another, from one generation to another. Do you guys agree with that? And did that happen with you, or did you have a different experience learning the process of animation?
I personally, I am a self-taught. I wasn't part of that generation who could access online classes, and even at school, it was really new when I started. But honestly, I worked very, very hard. I practiced a lot. Yes, yeah. It's, you know, like everything in life, I worked very hard. I put the hours, like Neave at 4 a.m. He was waking up to assist to his class. I will stay very late at my first jobs. Like, I had to prove myself. I had to, you know, push because yeah, it's hard like anything. But it's satisfying at the end if you then you get it, and then you care about it. Like, I think caring about what you do is showing in your work, and it shows to people as well. And yeah, so far I've been using that, caring and loving and trying my best, and it's been bringing me luck. So, but yeah, you need to work hard.
Yeah,
you need to invest hours.
I guess I had more of that like kind of mentorship thing that you mentioned, Scott. Animation Mentor, like I was really fortunate to even manage to develop like a relationship outside of the school eventually with my mentors and staying in touch with them. And also getting to know like mentors that weren't necessarily my teachers, and then actually ending up working with them. Like I've worked with some like that were like my supervisors or like a fellow lead. So yeah, it felt very much like a very intense like 12-week mentorship, and I was really, really thankful for that, for sure. Yeah, it doesn't mean you can do it without like working hard, but I cannot say that I'm self-taught. I've had so many incredible like teachers and mentors, and continue to do so, you know, at work. It just I continue trying to learn from everyone around me, whether it's the animators, supervisors, leads. Like it doesn't matter, you can always
it is a constant
learn from
learning
every person.
Yes,
and from every project.
Every project, everybody. And that's what I wanted to say as well. Relationships are very important. Like Neave and I, we have a friend in common. We realized it last time we talked. But yeah, it's a small world. So you will cross someone you worked with 10 years ago. Like I have friends I worked with in New Zealand more than 10 years ago, and they're in Vancouver now. And we are friends, and then we help each other. And yeah, we recommend each other, not because we're friends, because we are trusting each other work, but this is how it works as well. It's create links and for instance, at CG Spectrum, there's this awesome community that every time I try to go on the Slack channel and look how people talk to each other, and there's a strong community, and I think this is great, and they will go far because they're linked and they will help each other to get a job. Oh, that's so good. So yeah, nice. People, it's important.
Yeah, good. Well, thank you for sharing that. Now, I'm kind of getting back to the technical side of things. No sooner did you learn how to do animation, you know, in your various paths on your career and getting into the studios, then you kind of maybe had to start relearning, because this film has a little bit of a different technique, doesn't it? I mean, there's things
yes.
Does somebody want to talk and maybe explain to anybody who doesn't know what we mean when we say something's on 2s or it's on 1s or on 4s? Either one of you want to tackle that one? I'll let you flip a coin.
Neave.
Sure.
Yeah, Alex, Neave.
Yeah, so the basic understanding is in film, generally speaking, as far as I know, everything is 24 frames per second. So you have 24 drawings for each second of film that you see. And I believe Disney was the first to decide to try to animate on 2s in order to save time. So they decided there's this thing called persistence of vision, where if a frame, it lasts for more than one frame, you actually kind of see it and it works and it connects. I don't know the definition very well. But basically they were like, let's do 12 drawings for 24 frames. So there's 12 drawings and each one is shown for 2 frames. And so that's basically the definition of like animating on 2s or any sort of frame rate change. Like you could animate on 3s or 4s or 5s. So this project specifically, we were told that we can animate on 2s, of course, but not everything was on 2s. And sometimes with moving cameras, we would have certain things on 1s, certain things on 2s, and different stuff like that.
Because it will kind of strobes, it will show, it will not read properly. Sorry.
So there'll be, for sure. There'll be some shots where like the root of the character, so like the entire character, almost like a toy, is moved with the camera on 1s, but the pose holds itself. And a lot of these films before have done it as well. This isn't the first for sure. But to me, that was the big challenge to learn. And I mean, I already animated in 2D, so I knew I had a bit of experience with it, but it's always a challenge, is to know when to have things on a 2 and when to have things on a 1. So generally speaking, from my point of view, whenever you want an action to be really fast and impactful, I will try to use a 1. Like I will try to get the really big spacing gap between the each pose to be on 1 frame. Because if it's on 2, sometimes it can feel a little softer, depending on, because it's seen on screen for more than 1 frame. So that was probably the biggest challenge. And then of course, combining all the other things that, to me, even the lighting and the rendering and the comp and the effects, like they affect your animation. And so being aware of what is going to happen in your sequence and in your shot was like definitely a learning curve as well. And the paint effects lines as well. Like I've never done anything like that on any project before. And there was a lot of back and forth on like, oh, I should do this little blue line on 1 frame. And no, it should be black and it should be purple, like deciding all those things. So that was probably the biggest learning for me. I don't know about you. Ambre.
Just sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt. I just want to clarify because
Yeah.
I just think it's so cool. The first time I discovered this, I thought it was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. And so for anybody who doesn't know about this, paint effects, I mean, it's basically you are painting an effect. You're painting with geometry.
Yeah,
Right? I mean, that's
kind of, yeah.
the easiest way to sum it up, right? So
Yeah.
like the one I thought was really cool is you could paint with hands. So you could have like this array of little hands that you're painting with. And it just blew me away. And you could paint buildings. But in this case, you guys were painting like geometric tubes that represented lines. Is that?
Yeah, they were basically like three-dimensional curves, kind of. Like they were still
There you go,
polygons, they were
curves.
still a mesh, which were later baked out, as far as I know. But yeah, in our scene,
Yes.
you could see them in 3D. And but
And
yeah,
they
that
look like
was
a
the
pen.
yeah.
The texture looked like a pen. When you were
Mhm.
drawing a line, it looked like, like a pencil.
Yeah.
And
It wasn't like-
you'd use like a pen to draw with, right?
Yes.
Sometimes
that
I
would
use
be
a
very-
mouse.
Oh,
Sometimes
you
I
would.
use
You
a
would
mouse
use a
You're
mouse.
right, actually.
to make it
because
look
you want them
more.
rough.
Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
Nice.
right. That's right. But yeah, even like I started many times on top, like, no, that's not good. No, that's not good.
Yeah.
It
but
sounds
yeah.
like so much fun, a lot of trial and error. That's the stuff that makes it fun. It keeps you from
Mhm.
it gives it that different, interesting look. But what about 2D effects though, on top of all of that? There was, because we haven't really talked too much about the fact that this has kind of a 2D comic book or manga look, doesn't it? It has
Mhm.
the texturing and does somebody want to talk about that a little bit? How you achieve that look overall?
Well, it takes a village, it takes a city to
Yeah.
make a
So
movie.
you guys didn't personally,
So,
I knew this,
Neave
but
and
just,
I were just a little
right.
part of that
Yeah.
movie, really. And so they are amazing artists. There's so many things you can do on an animation movie. It's not only animation. There's like starts from a script, it starts from a storyboard, and then animatic. There's so many layers to it. So I can't talk about it because I don't know, and that's why I want to keep the magic when I'm going to go to the theater because
She doesn't
going to
wanna know.
blow my mind. Because I don't know. I just stopped where I stopped myself, where I animated. That's what I saw on my computer screen. Obviously, I followed up a little bit what my shot looked like at the end with the texture and everything. But then the effects, the compositing and the lighting, like all the beautiful stuff on top, I just let it to, I still want to dream. I'm still a kid inside.
Yeah,
So that's the magic that other people add. So I
you
don't
really
know. I can't
didn't
talk about
know until the render came back how it was going to
Some
look.
of them, yeah, some of them we didn't know, but there were certain things like in the model that you could see, like
Yes.
there were certain characters will have like certain like marks, like whether it was like a black line,
Yes.
or
Yes.
like 3-dimensional kind of texturing on it, or as we talked like about this sort of like displacement-y
Yes,
clay
you
kind
can
of
talk
thing that was
about
on the
that. That was
mesh.
interesting.
So our characters, like when we were animating, in order to keep it like fast enough for us to like animate and not for the computer to be really, really slow, we removed a lot of these things from the model and texture as much as we could. But yeah, once you turned it on, you could see the kind of more faceted sculptural kind of blockiness of the characters shown.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then as we mentioned, like they did a lot of the 2D effects in Harmony, as I've learned. So they would literally just create it on top. But yeah, I don't know the full extent of like every single thing that they did and how they did everything. As Ambre said, it's a bit magical to me as well. Yeah, for sure.
It was magic.
But yeah, lots and lots of yeah, and you could see it as well. Like if you guys have ever seen like on animated films, sometimes they'll share like color scripts where they've already kind of designed the lighting and the comp that they have in mind for the end. So sometimes before you animate it, you could see the color script and you'd be like, oh, that's kind of what they're going for. So maybe that'll give you a sense. But I remember the first time I saw an explosion in the film, like while we were working on it, I was like blown away. I was like, I did not expect it to look like that at all. Because it looked like kind of like someone just grabbed crayons and like colored pencils. And I was just like, that was incredible. Like that was a shock to me. But
yeah,
we saw little vignettes of like little drawings,
works
like
in
artists,
progress and stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
like of like what it will look like. So
and you had looked to look at beforehand. This is what we're going for.
Yes.
And this is what it will. Yeah, that was always the fun too. It's like one day it's going to look like this. It doesn't right now. But one day it's going to look. We hope.
Yeah.
Somebody asked a question that I think is really relevant. In 2D, we would be assigned to one single character. Like when I was working on Pocahontas, that's all I did. I would just work on that character. I knew the character inside and out. I could draw from any angle. I knew what she was thinking, et cetera, et cetera. And then when we jumped into 3D, suddenly it was like, okay, here's a scene with 5 characters in it. Go. Is that what your experience was like on, or did you guys get to know each of the characters and like, I'm only going to do Donatello. That's my thing. Or
no, you do them all.
Ambre should answer that first.
Yes. No, if you have the 5 brothers in your scene, the 4 brothers, sorry, and plus the Splinter, you animate all of them, and it's your responsibility. It's your scene, and I mean, it's fun. You don't. Yeah. You get to touch everybody. You get to touch everybody's personality, and that's really cool. It's challenging as well because often they interact with each other. So there's a moment they touch shoulders and they're like, pushing each other. Or so you have all those things. It's your responsibility. You need to deliver this scene clean, and that it works. It's a choreography that you're kind of organizing, and I think like Neave, you want to talk about choreography maybe later. But
we'll talk about it later. Yeah, but I will say like one of the advantages we have and I think in 2D, from what I've learned, I've never been on a traditional hand-drawn 2D, so correct me if I'm wrong, you highly rely on like model sheets, right?
Yes.
So in 3D, the kind of equivalent that we have is like a pose library, like a studio library. So usually at the beginning of the project, the leads and usually senior animators will start first and they'll create kind of the pose library. And so in that case, we did assign specific people like, hey, you do the pose library for this character. So that does give you kind of a sense of like almost becoming a bit of a character lead on it. Sometimes characters change and we get away from the pose library a little bit, but it definitely allows you to infer a lot of the characters' design principles and just general like appeal kind of rules. Like we would ideally have these kind of do's and don'ts sheets, like kind of like a character Bible and stuff like that. So you still have this element of, trying to keep everyone on model and the same. And then, of course, sometimes if we have like a sequence with like a lot of characters in the background, I was tasked, for example, with creating a few like idle kind of cycles for each character. And so I was like, okay, how would this character stand and breathe versus this one? Would this one, be a bit more slow and heavy versus this one might be a bit more twitchy and kind of like anxious or whatever? And then the animators can like plug it into their shot and adjust as need be. But yes, generally speaking, on most of the productions I've been on, like the characters in your shot are the characters in your shot, unless there's like, 50,000 civilians running in the background. That might be like a crowd artist department kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Hey, what team were you? I was Team Donnie. What was your?
I was Leo.
Oh, you were
Leo.
Leo.
Blue. Yeah. It's on a blue, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
How did that work out with the teams? What's Team Leo mean?
Oh, it was just a name we gave to them. Yeah, we didn't. Yeah,
we
didn't all only work on the. It's confusing. Yeah, it's just a fun.
It's fun working on.
But for instance, my lead on the movie, so we were Team Donnie. So he was the lead who developed a little bit more.
He loved Donnie.
He loved Donnie. Juan
yeah.
Carlos, and so he was the one to go to if another lead was a bit confused about what will Donnie look like in this shot or that kind of stuff. So we had 4 teams. So there was Team Leo, Team Donnie, Team Raphael, and Team Michelangelo. So we were spread this way, and it was fun. There was no Team April.
No Team April, no Team Splinter.
No. Not enough. No, there was not enough team. We were enough.
Nice.
There's always as well, like usually when we work on a project, there's always a nickname on the project. I don't know if
yes, because you're not supposed to say what you're working on. What was this one? Can you say?
It was
I don't know.
TMNT. It was TMNT.
I don't think we had one.
There wasn't one.
Admitted it. No.
We just admitted
it. It's weird. I don't know why. Sometimes they are secret names, but no, that one was TMNT.
I guess they figured everyone was.
Just a thing to say to everybody that usually when you work on a movie, you don't know. We worked on a TV show called Iwaju for it's a Disney TV show that it's going to release on Disney Plus, and inside Cinesite it was called Squeak. Who knows why? I don't know why. It probably means something to someone. And if someone says you worked on Squeak, you're like, yeah.
All right, so Neave, you mentioned something a bit ago about choreography, and we've got a prompt about the Splinter fight scene. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. So that I will preface by saying a lot of leads on different like productions don't generally like animate, and I wasn't like asked to animate, but I really wanted to. Like, I feel like it's really important to be able to lead your teams because you know the characters more and you know whatever technical hurdles like your animators are dealing with. So at that point, I hadn't really animated that much, but this shot came up in the big kind of Splinter fighting sequence, the one, well, I guess I can't spoil it, although I guess you worked on it, so you know, but one of the big Splinter fight sequences with a bunch of guards. And so I was given storyboards with Splinter and a few kind of like prompts, like directions that the directors really, really wanted. So the two big ones were like, they really wanted the actions to feel like they were overlapping each other, as it says, like, so like they didn't want it to feel like Splinter was attacking one guard and then finishing and then another. Like, it really wanted to feel like they were all coming at him at this kind of as close as possible. And then they wanted the guards to have some specific interactions that were in the boards, and obviously just like make it badass, right? Like Splinter is like an incredible fighter, so try to make it as badass. And Splinter is played by Jackie Chan, and so we really tried to reference Jackie Chan as much as we could. So luckily, when I was back in school, I did a fighting shot, so I had already seen most of Jackie Chan's films, but that's basically what I did kind of again. And I created this crazy Word document that I wrote the timestamp of the shot. And I would say, oh, this is a good kick, and this is a good punch, and this is a good grab. And then I would basically combine the references together to try to match the storyboards as closely as possible. And then pitch that to the directors. And they were like, cool, go for it. And then I just had to do it. So it's like an 11-second shot with like 6 characters fighting, plus like the 4 turtles in the background and 3 other guards. So as you mentioned, like, oh, you know, it's a lot to animate all the characters, you know, that's what it was. And then the biggest challenge, I think one of the questions I saw someone was saying, like, do you use like human references for the turtles? And the answer is yes, because we don't really have much anything else. I mean, of course, you can take reference from anything like animals or other movies and shows. But it was really challenging to fit a human kind of locomotion onto Splinter because his proportions are very different. So the biggest thing I felt was the challenge was Splinter is not going to be able to do a lot of like blocking and punching and having a lot of back and forth because he's so short. He can't like punch a guard and continue fighting. So I tried to create moves that he would like neutralize his opponent within one hit. There wouldn't be a lot of like back and forth, and trying to make that basically as cool as possible. But it was terrifying. Like, I was terrified to do the shot. I was really stressed about it. I'd never done choreography to this extent, you know, but luckily, like, I really relied on like the directors for like feedback, my supervisor, Eric, and the other lead, Juan, as well. Like, I just got tons and tons of notes on them. I think my record was like, I think I had 79 drawings, notes on my shot. And I think I won the record for most saves on a file. I think because I was so afraid to lose my animation, I think I saved 632 versions.
Oh my god.
As well as like making sure the animation was like saved onto like Studio Library and like all this like stuff. Because I didn't want to risk it, you know, when you're working on something that intense, like to lose any of your work can be really difficult.
Best lesson ever, day one, lesson number 1. Save.
I save all the time. Yeah, you gotta save. You never know what's gonna happen. So I was really, you know, honored that they let me do the shot, and I'm happy that the directors really liked it. So, you know, I was very, very thankful for that opportunity.
And that's the reward at the end when you show your shots to the directors. Everybody is different, right? But Jeff was special in that way. He will just laugh if he likes what you've done. He will
some
just
swear words.
He was so natural, and the reaction was like, yes. You're like, yes, he loved it, and that's so rewarding. You're like, okay.
Amber, speaking of which, I wanted to ask you, like, what was your favorite or most noteworthy? It doesn't have to be your favorite, but what was like the shot that you remember the most of working, if you have one, on this film, and why?
I know what my favorite Ambre shot is.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Which one?
When the turtles react to
oh yeah. I think that's the one. I was about to talk about the one I struggled the most, but I will not.
Sure.
That's valuable too. It's all good.
No, I think I wanted to add that as Neave mentioned, there's a lot of preparation before you even touch your computer. So you will film lots of reference. Obviously, maybe not doing kung fu, but for animating the turtles, like we could have access to the actors recording their voices, but honestly, I never do that. I try not to, because it doesn't give me much inspiration, I have to say. That's my opinion. Yeah. So I will kind of film reference of myself. So that will sometimes take 1 day, maybe 2 days, where I'm losing time, depending on the shot, but it's really a very important step for me to film references. So I had a shot with all the brothers together, reacting, touching. There was lots of stuff happening, and I got to do some lines. They were afraid because Splinter put the light on, and they're like, "Wah!" They're doing something like that. So I got to do like some lines and big eyes.
But you also pitched things that they would do, like in the boards and in the layout. The turtles were just kind of like that.
Yeah,
and then
Ambre,
if I remember correctly, you wanted to have them interact with their weapons and accessories, because if they're genuinely afraid, maybe one of them would like grab their weapon or something like that, right? Like
exactly. Like,
and the directors loved it. I remember when you pitched it.
Glasses, yes, it was. Yeah, there's I filmed myself with glasses. I took like a broom. Just for I took stuff that I found in my home, and I film, and then I cut, and then I suggested the idea. So maybe that was my favorite, because I love animating emotions. That's my favorite thing. And the one I struggled the most was the one I had to do with a bunch of mutants running all together and Splinter jumping. And I had so many notes on this, but I had that animation in once, that my shot were looking, I can't find this word, strobing.
Strobing, jittering,
Yes, so I kind of, you have to do research. So I went and I looked at a movie that I really enjoyed. It's The Last Puss in Boots. I really like that movie.
The Last Wish?
Yes, it's so good.
So
I went frame by frame to see, because when he's fighting, the scenes are animated in twos as well.
Twos, yeah.
So there was a moment he's running on a giant tree, and he's animated in two. So he holds the frame, like his pose, for 2 frames, right? He holds a pose, but he moves in the space while the camera is moving. So that avoid that strobing kind of sensation. So I did research, and I looked, and I got inspired from that. And it's not like any artist, you have to look at, like, you have to educate yourself and look what others did before to do a good job. So that was my experience on that shot. It was my last shot, and it lasted a long time.
Nice.
There's always one like that.
Yeah, well, that's kind of what I was getting at. There's always that one shot, for good or for ill, that you remember more than the others.
For sure.
Good. Yeah. We're going to move into, gently ease into some Q&A stuff, because we got a lot of cool questions, and I want to get to as many of them as we can.
Sure.
But I'm going to start off by asking you each, because this has come up, like, do you have a favorite turtle? Is one of the turtles your favorite?
Donnie, Team Donnie forever. No, I like Donnie. I love his voice and his glasses and his headphones and his personality. I enjoyed him a lot, but all of them, but that one.
I think I'm Mikey. I think he's just like the most positive, and like he always brings them together. I don't know. I really liked his personality, and I thought he was really cute. Like I remember seeing one of the animators on my team animate like a test shot with him, and I was like, he is so cute, like he's just so appealing, and his braces, and I don't know.
Yes,
really
yes, it makes him real, and you can relate. Actually, that's
Yeah,
what
you
it's
can
nice as well. You can relate.
Yeah, so I like
like we were saying, these characters, they come to life when you're animating. That is, and you did it. You brought them to life. And now they're out there doing their own thing. So
yeah.
Okay, great. Well, we're going to just keep continuing this conversation, but we'll see if we can answer some of these questions. I'm going to answer a couple of them real quick, and these are going to be sort of quick answers, hopefully. And then I'm going to start tossing them out to you guys, or if you feel like you want to jump in and answer one of them, if you feel strongly about it yourself. But one question we had from someone named Sikander, hopefully I'm saying that right, is how will AI help animators in the future? And we're talking about this all the time. AI, it just keeps coming up. And the truth of the matter is we will use it for the same thing we use other things. It's a tool. It's not a brain, it's a tool. It's a creative tool that helps you get where you want to get. And as long as you're using it for that, you're using it in a proper way. If you're using it to take the place of creativity, it's not going to work. And we can all see when it doesn't work, and you can feel it. So yeah, it's helpful. It's a tool. It's like reference, viz dev art, everything. And it's not even a matter of, oh, it's going to, and we should be afraid. Don't be afraid. It's not going to take over, because it can't. It just can't. So it's a tool. Use it, make friends with it, but and then move on. So let's look at another one. There was a question that I saw about that I thought was a really easy one. What made you guys go from a career in animation to teaching and mentoring? I thought that was
That's a cool question.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just going to toss them out.
I'll be honest, I started teaching like other things when I was really young. I think I taught guitar when I was like 15. And then I taught English later when I was like 20. So I've always liked it. My father is a teacher, my grandfather was a teacher, my brother was a teacher. So I always knew that I liked it. And then, to be honest, I just found a really great sense of like fulfillment in like teaching. Very, very different than the fulfillment you get from a project. And then also like the social aspect, you know, often whether you're in studio or at home, you're animating alone in front of a computer, can be a bit solitary. I really like the environment with like students and building relationships with people. I've become friends with some of my students and have worked with them. So like, I think just getting a greater sense of like the animation community in that sense and helping people, like that was probably how I transitioned into it. Yeah,
great. How about you, Ambre?
Oh, I have no one being a teacher in my family, and I was pretty, I didn't even know if I could pass my knowledge to someone, but CG Spectrum gave me a chance, and it really forced me to explain how I do things. And you know, when you do your job, you just do it. You don't know, but so the first year was challenging this way. But then when I passed that, oh my God, I love so much, you know, passing the torch, as you said, and seeing people getting it and being caring, passionate. Like I have students, they're like, hey, look, I have this. Like they talk to me. They're like, can you look at this? And at the end, they find a job and they're happy doing this. That's the most rewarding thing. So for me, that's
Definitely.
that. The community and the human relationship, like.
Yeah. Definitely. All right, I'm going to bounce around a little bit. So somebody asked, we kind of answered this. Did you animate on ones and twos, or did they put it through a filter? That's a question.
We animated on ones and twos.
You animated on ones. Was stepped? Did you?
Yes.
Yeah. Stepped. And then from what I've been told, like the CFX department as well was able to create the simulation on two. Sorry, CFX is character effects, so like clothing, hair, certain accessories. Not a lot of them were like hand animated. But yeah, you would have to decide whether you want it on a one or a two. There's no filters. It's all human decisions.
Yeah. It depends on the workflow of people. Some will animate like they will animate any other, like in ones, and then they will, we call it bake. So they will kind of make every 2 frames, they will hold it. They will hold the frame. So that gives that effect of like a traditional animation. But some animators, their workflow is directly working in 2s or 3s, like they're already animating this way. So you really have to cherish your poses. You have to make them look very good. Like every pose is a painting, and every pose has an intention, and you have to nail it. Yeah. I would say that's a good challenge.
Now, speaking of which, somebody asked about like Mikey has a black eye and some of the characters have details.
Yeah.
Is that on the actual rig, or was that added later? Stuff like that.
I actually don't know about Mikey's one, but on TMNT and other productions I've been, a lot of times it's like a different rig. So like the black eye, I think, is a model change. So it has to be a completely different rig. Sometimes if it's just something added on top, then they'll do it later. But I remember being on productions where like a character needed to be more like burnt or hurt, or like their armor was like damaged, and we would change the rig as we kind of went. But yeah, that's not really something that I think the animators decide too much on. It's just kind of, we're told this is the rig you're supposed to use for this shot because Mikey has a black eye, so that's what you would use. But I don't specifically know about the Mikey black eye, I will admit. I remember seeing it in the movie and I was like, oh, that's really cool black eye. Like, I like it, but I don't know who and how.
It's magic. It's magic.
Magic of tons of artists, yeah.
That brings up a question. Jem Smith asks, how much of the aesthetic is generated automatically and how much is handcrafted? It's all handcrafted.
Oh, it's everything handcrafted.
Everything is like thought from brain to hand.
Yeah, and even before the actual artist works on it, like we mentioned, there will be an artist who designs these things, like whether it's throughout the whole sequence or in the shot, someone has to paint and draw these things. I believe the production designer, Yashar, he has Instagram and Twitter, and he's posting a lot of the stuff on the movie, and he's incredible. And all of his team of I'm just like following all these people that I don't know because they're in a different part of the production than me, right? They come before me or sometimes after. And then of course, like from what I've heard, I haven't been in like the lighting reviews and all those things. Like it was crazy hard because the directors wanted something super specific and also unexpected. A lot of the lighting, I think, in the sequences and all these like handcrafted elements that you see are like, I think, very different than what you would expect from some of these sequences generally. So as far as I know, like it's all, even if it is like simulated, someone has to decide, how is this going to move? How is this going to look? What color is this thing? Like everything is a decision. And I think all animations like that, right? I don't think this movie's any different. Like you start with nothing. So like you have to decide these things. Whether you use some sort of tool to help you with that is a different story, but someone has to decide what every single color and effect and anything looks like.
But in terms of like the 2D effects that you added, Daniel Williams is asking about that, adding the 2D effects. Amber, you said you had a lot of freedom, right? You said that.
Yeah.
And someone, Grace also asks about the scribble lines and, to what extent that is actually part of the process. So like, did you show that in dailies? Did you show it as part of your, like your play blasts, or was that, it's like, oh, it's coming.
There was first of all, there was like, there were, I don't know how to call them, like design sheets of like example of lines that we could do or not do, but it was written like, you can do lines. It was a very friendly kind of document. Feel free to suggest some line for action, for speed, for emotions. And this is, don't do those straight lines, what I said at the beginning of the webinar, like don't do but try to do like kind of rough lines, that kind of stuff. And then, when the opportunity, it's also your responsibility when the opportunity is showing itself on your shot, not going to draw a line for drawing a line. Like if there's an action and you want something speedy like this, then you're like, oh yeah, that could be a good place to do those lines. Yeah. And you will show them in dailies to your lead, first, then to your supervisor, and then so on to the director. Like he has to pass people before. So you can be reassured that you had a good idea with putting those lines. So you don't do like crazy lines just for doing lines.
Yeah.
Yeah. They have to be justified.
Yeah. Now, Kylie Figueroa asks about the development of the 3D animation, the style for the film. And just real quick answer, I'll take that one, is basically, as an animator, you're not deciding these things. You aren't the person who decides how this film's going to look or what the story is. And I say that, I think it's important to stress that, because a lot of times we get students who come into our courses and they think, okay, I'm going to make my own Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. The answer is that you're not. And somebody down in the questions asked and said, do we actually do short projects in the class? And the answer is, yeah, we do very, 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 very short projects in the class, because animation takes a long time. And so, yeah, you're not going to do your own feature film. You're not going to create your own game from beginning to end. You are responsible for everything when you do a short film. And so you have to come up with all the look of it and the rigs, or if 2D, if you're doing the model sheets. And so, yes, just to answer those questions, you, as an animator, you would be responsible for that. You'd be responsible for the animation. And you've heard our guests talking about the special situations where they did things that they wouldn't usually do, but that's kind of rare. So just wanted to answer that one real quick.
Yes. However, if you in a community like CG Spectrum, I saw students from all the different specialties getting together, and I actually have two students in animation going to try and do a little project together. Yeah. So I found that it's wonderful. They're using what they're learning, and it can be done, but definitely not alone. Or, you know, you
can do it alone too.
But that's not a while.
Yeah, that is not, it's not that realistic to think about it, especially if you're going to take a course. You're going to take a course to learn the craft, which is what we all did. Yes. And that's what you're doing on a film like this, is you are demonstrating your ability to breathe life into a character and make the character breathe. And that takes all your time. It's a full-time job.
As I said, I had no idea what happened after or even before. I'm just given like a storyboard with your character has to do this and that, and that's what they say. Okay, thank you. That takes enough time.
That's enough. That's
enough.
And somebody asked a question, how many hours did you put in? Caleb asked a question, how many hours did you put in the movie? Can you give us a real quick rough? You told me that this wasn't.
We worked 5 days a week for, you know,
you told me that wasn't a tough one.
I think I had a few weeks of a bit of overtime, also as like a lead, like juggling lead duties and animating. But as far as my point of view, like I didn't see anyone on our teams do anything too crazy, and the production team was incredibly supportive and understanding, and we shuffled things around if need be. And I remember people going on vacation during the production as well. Like it was like I felt like the production was very understanding of that. But yeah, like every project, you know, you sometimes end up having to, you know, maybe do a few more hours during the week. But
we were a good team. We were helping each other in any way. So if one couldn't do it, there was another one who is happy to do overtime, because, you know, overtime is paid, and we had food as well. Having fun, allowed. If you work more than 2 hours after the regular 8 hours, you will be paid for your extra time, and you will have food. So I mean, for some people who want extra cash, and that was very welcome. I did want extra cash too, but I have 2 kids. So for me, it was like I was doing overtime, for instance, but not all the week. So, but everybody was respectful. Like if I had to go, I had to go. You know, mental health is very important nowadays. So I hope that we'll keep going, because it's very important. And that production has been very good. Easy.
That's great. I love hearing stories like that and sharing that with the student.
Yeah.
We kind of answered this question already. This comes from someone named Anonymous Attendee. So don't be afraid. Tell us your name. But they just want to know about the style. I think we kind of answered this, but did anyone specifically sit down with you and say, okay, Donatello behaves this way, Michelangelo behaves this way? Did you have a style guide, or like you said, Neave, a Bible, we sometimes call it that?
We had a little bit. I think for me, the biggest one was like looking at the stuff that was already animated, like Mikros animated a lot of stuff, you know, when I joined already, and their animation was incredible. Like the stuff that they did, amazing. So I referred to a lot of that. And then of course, just like paying attention, like to dailies. Like I always encourage animators, like even if you're not showing a shot in dailies with the directors, like go to the dailies, because that's where you're going to learn the most about what do the directors want out of these characters, what do they want out of these films. So that's probably the best way to learn. That was what it was for me on this production. But yeah.
And watching movies who have been done this style as well, like especially animating on twos. So I had an experience already. I worked on the Willoughbys, so I knew what it meant to do animating on twos, but some people didn't. So yeah, you have to educate yourself, like everything. Like you just watch movies, as the Neave said. You go to the dailies, yeah, you read the documents, and then you try, and then you see if they said yes or if they say, and then you learn from your mistake, and then you do better next time.
Yeah. Okay, quick ones. Napoleon Duncan asks, how did it feel bringing these iconic characters to life in a completely new and radical way? I like how that was phrased. How did it feel to?
It's great.
Yeah,
it's fun.
Good.
Yeah, amazing.
Awesome. There's nothing else to say.
Yeah, no, I get that impression.
It's going to be hard to challenge that for the next. Actually, it's going. Actually, at Cinesite, we're going to work on something pretty cool as well with other very iconic characters. I don't know if it's. I think we can talk about it. Neave,
I was going to say, are you allowed to say what it is?
You know,
I think it's announced. Blue, I'm always afraid, but you can look online.
I think it's okay. It would be my fault, but it's about those little blue characters, you know, from that comic book. Anybody?
The white hats.
Yes, the Smurfs. The Schtroumpf. Yes, we're going to animate it in a. Yeah, it's the name in French.
Yeah.
We're going to animate it in a total, like in a new way as well. So it's going to be super fun as well. So looking forward to that. Yeah.
I don't know if anyone can answer this one. William Meyer asks, is the bumpiness we see in character models geometry, or is it a normal bump displacement mapping situation?
I think it's both, but I think it's a lot of geometry. Like that was the kind of, they called it displacements in our scene, that's what it was called. Yeah. And we had to like turn it off and on whenever we were working on it, because it really slowed down your scene, because it adds so much more polygons and information to your mesh. But I don't know if there were other stuff that was done to, to enhance that, but I'm pretty sure there's probably a lot of other textures and maps on.
Sure. Yeah. I'm going to answer this one. Laura Cavallo-Morris asks a general question about being in environments, and when you're doing something like that, do you do everything, and should you learn everything? And the answer is yeah, you should learn everything about everything. I mean, if you're interested in digital arts, you should be drawing and painting and researching and looking at animation and learning a bit. I don't know for you too, but I always found, especially in creature effects, I learned everything I used ever in my life was used on creature effects. Like Life of Pi, they said, oh, could you change the camera and maybe make the water higher and then make the tiger go over here instead of over there? I'm like, what kind of an acrobat do you think I am? But because I had been doing this stuff all my life, I went, oh, sure, yeah, I can do that. So yeah, my answer is basically, learn everything about everything. But if you're interested in environments, focus on that.
Yeah, I would just say, like, when you're starting out, I would personally specialize, just so you can get that first job and get started. And then from there, if you want to learn more things. But from my experience, most people who are professionally capable of doing more than one thing, besides being incredibly talented and hardworking, have probably been doing it for a really long time. Yeah. You don't see a lot of 20-year-olds who are both like, 3D animators and amazing 3D modelers, for example. But there are still people like that as well, of course. And you see more and more people who are just doing tons of stuff on their own. So it's incredible, but I think
it's scary. Stop doing that. Stop.
Stop doing that.
No.
I just think it takes so much time.
I can't watch LinkedIn anymore. Stop it.
It takes so much time to get good at just this one thing. So that's my mindset, but yeah.
All right, Francis Wong asks 2D and 3D general question, is there going to be a need for 2D? And obviously there is. As I've been saying for years and years and years, there's no need for either or. There's like, there was this, I'm not going to name names, but there was a kind of a push for, okay, now we just do 3D and 2D's dead, it's over. 2D never went away, and it's still as prevalent as ever. And so, get into both. If you're interested in 2D, keep doing it. Do what you love what you do.
Yeah. Especially if you're open to doing like Toon Boom Harmony 2D, which even then sometimes will still combine like traditional hand drawing. Like if you look at like some of the shows like San Diego.
San Diego.
What was it called? Nerd Techs. Like a lot of these shows, like we'll still have these like 2D rigs, like puppet rigs, but people will also still draw. So if you're open to that, there's a lot of work in 2D as well, you know, and I think it really helps to know both, because then you'll be on a project where you'll need to do both, a little bit of both. And
yeah, the more you know,
it's
the
great.
better.
Yeah, and it's great for visualizing your 3D animation, you know, for a lot of stuff that you're animating where you can't film reference or whatever. If you're able to draw a little bit and animate in 2D, it's really, really helpful.
I just wanted to add that we talked earlier, but my 2 kids are actually watching Bluey.
Oh yeah, that's also Harmony animated, right? Yeah,
exactly. Everything they watch is 2D, and they love it, and less likely to watch, you know, TV shows in 3D, but
right.
They much prefer, like my daughter, like Hilda, she likes The Last Kid on
Oh
Earth,
yeah,
or like all those shows, all those DreamWorks 2D shows. Like my daughter, 10 years old, she loved them. So not the 3D ones. So that's more movies. The 3D movies, like yes, but the 2D is never going to die. No way.
Hey, Amber, I think you'd mentioned this before. If not, I mean, either one of you doesn't matter. Marina, hi Marina. Marina asks, did the rigs have any special features, like to get exaggeration poses? Could you pull and stretch them in special ways that were built into the rigs to get appeal, but also extremes? You know, like some of the rigs have these exaggeration things where you won't break it if you stretch it and pull it. And
yeah.
Did they have that?
Sometimes they're called like bend bows or like shapers. Yeah, these rigs had it all pretty much, as far as I know. Even like controls of the actual shells. Yeah, you could scale things, you could stretch things.
You should have to, because it's got to go with the body, right? Yeah.
There was some really nice like automation stuff as well in the rig, like that the riggers did, which is incredible. I remember the shells would move when they were breathing. Sometimes, like if you were to animate the chest and like to breathe, it would work really nicely. You still have to like handcraft it and like adjust it. Sometimes it would also cause issues.
The bandanas, I remember.
The bandanas.
So that was a pain.
Bandanas, were kind of a combination. Like there was some simulation on them, but there was also a lot of like hand keying them, and also deciding, you know, what are they going to be posed like, and making sure the continuity is there throughout the sequence. Like we were like, okay, for this sequence, Donnie's going to be like this, and you know his bandana is going to be like that, and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, the rigs were really good. I really enjoyed the rigs. But yeah. Lots to do.
We have lots of possibilities to move them, stretch them, break them, smear them, deform them. You can. Yeah.
And speaking of which, Mariana Cantillo asks, how much did the pose library guide the final result of the shots? And was that a way to keep the animation in character? Is that how you guys kept things on model? Is you used like the pose library, or
personally, it's a good start. Like that is how I experience it. It's a good start. It's a good library to go back to, but quickly I know what to do. I knew what to do, and I will maybe use the library. The most of the time I use the libraries for the lip sync when I have to animate the character, the mouth shapes. Yes, because those can be tough, and you have to have a good continuity between shots, and that's important. So I will use a lot the mouse library. The eyes, no, because a little bit for a starting pose, but then once my mouth is doing what I want, I kind of work with the eyes and the expression. But for the body poses, I rarely use the library. No, or a cycle maybe if the character is running. Oh, for sure, because that's a pain.
I can think of like 2 times I've seen a cycle. Like I have not seen a lot of cycles in the film because everything was just so. There was so much like interaction with the environment. So anytime you're not on a flat terrain and your character isn't moving in a straight line, a cycle is not going to work. And then obviously if they're talking, if there's performance on top, like the cycle will be like maybe a starting point just to help you. But yeah, this show is, at least from my perspective, like I didn't see a lot of like body, pose library stuff, but mouth shapes was definitely very helpful.
Nice.
And
Another question. Corey Dornbush asks, are you guys going to work on the spin-offs or the streaming show? Any talk? Are you wouldn't be able to say
Je
anything,
ne
right?
sais pas.
Yeah. Je sais pas.
I didn't hear the question.
Oh, sorry.
Oh.
Sorry. No, the question was, were you going to work on like future productions involving the Turtles, like spin-offs or the streaming? Yeah, who knows?
Je ne sais pas non plus.
No,
Je ne sais pas non plus.
That would be cool. I loved it. That would be cool. I don't know.
Yeah.
Let's
It
see.
would be cool, but we don't know.
We don't know.
Yeah.
We know the Smurf. That's already
Yeah,
something.
that's next. We have a quick one. I'll answer this. No, I'm sorry, Bilal. What important thing to get as a storyboard artist in the animation industry? You have to draw a lot. You have to love and research film and film technique, and you have to know people. So, yeah. Jill Smith asks, what's your process for researching? I think you guys talked a little bit about that. You watched the shows, you watched previous incarnations of things. As an experienced animator, you have a library in your head at some point, and that's something you can use too. And then
You should references.
reference.
Yes.
Yeah, lots of reference, and
And
you'd be
somebody else
surprised where
asked
you can
about that.
find, where you can find reference, like whether it's documentaries or like opera theater. You could look at animals. Like there's like reference to be found anywhere. I use Giphy a lot. Like if you go to Giphy.com and you type in like laughing, you just get a bunch of different like characters, whether live action or animating, like laughing. This was something that I was taught by Michael Makarowicz, like in one of his lectures. Like, yeah, so you can really do
Pixar
research in many
animator.
different ways. Yeah, Pixar. Yeah. So tons of ways to do research. Yeah.
Nice. All right, we got about 10 minutes. We got about 33 questions, so we're not going to get to them all, but we'll I'm just going to go down the list and get through as many as we can. And then I think we're allowed to answer these after. So hopefully we'll get to them. But when learning to animate, did you guys learn on any particular programs when you were learning?
I
the
learned
craft?
Maya in school, and then I learned Toon Boom Harmony on the job. And recently I learned a bit of Blender, but it was more for rendering and lighting. I didn't really animate it with it. But in terms of work, 3D, I've only ever used Maya.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's still standard industry. What about you, Ambre?
I think I started with 3ds Max, but if I have to open it, I'll be like, I don't know. But yeah, most of my career, like all the time in production, Maya, and I love it. It's part of me now.
Good. Anonymous asked, was it a struggle to animate some of the more bizarre looking characters?
Yes, very.
That's the fun.
Very.
That's the fun part.
I'm happy someone asked, because I think the animators made it look effortless. Like the characters look amazing, but when we first got them and we were like rig testing and like looking at like how are these characters going to move, like Superfly for instance, it was pretty intimidating. Even just taking the time to like learn their controls, like how do I move this kind of thing.
And some didn't have controls sometimes.
Yeah,
they didn't have controllers.
Wow.
For sure.
You have to improvise.
And the various like accessories and stuff. There was a lot of really, I think the limitation breeds kind of the creativity. So there was stuff that like certain animators, I remember one animator did this. It was kind of like a camera issue combined with like the character limitations and the action that was needed. And he decided, I'm just going to do this thing where I like have the alligator go down through the pipes. And then we were like, how do we move the pipes? And then we had to figure out how do we move these like tubes and pipes. And it's in the final film and I think it looks amazing. So, but yeah, it was definitely challenging to animate them. Just asymmetry, right? Hard to animate those asymmetrical designs.
Ollie had asked if there are particular challenges around animation process. I think we kind of answered that. I mean, it's always a challenge. It's
always a challenge.
Every step of the way is a challenge, and that's the fun. I can't pronounce this name. I apologize. I'm not even going to try. But they were wondering. I was wondering how long was the production process? How long were you guys on this film?
I was on from only January to July, but Mikros was on it from way before that. I don't know.
Oh yes,
sure.
I don't know.
Because it's a combination, right? Well, later than you.
Oh, okay. So maybe
for
February.
Me yes, I think so. But I don't know if everybody knows, but we were 2 companies to work on it, and mostly Mikros in Montreal. We participated to help finish the movie. Like we had a part of the movie to work on, but Mikros had, I don't know, a big part. We only had a small participation on it, but it was a good one. We had a very good one. We were very, very happy.
Yeah.
Nice. I'm going to skip to a tech question because I like these. I think people like these. Grace Bennett asks, was the entire background a 3D model, or were there hand-painted 2D scenes in certain shots, like the skylines?
Definitely probably hand-painted,
yeah.
Some, but I don't know the extent, because sometimes what you have in your Maya scene isn't the final. It'll be just like a proxy kind of version of it. But even the ones that were 3D models, there would still be so many 2D elements. Like the ooze, if I remember correctly, I think was 2-dimensional, but I'm not sure. That's what it looked like from my mind. Magic. Yeah.
Matt Edwards asked a question. Again, I'm skipping because it's a quick one. Do you have to be careful about working on the film and, leaking out information? And the answer is yes. You have to be very careful. They don't want you talking. We were going to have other presentations. I'm not going to say for what, but and we couldn't really do them because the secrecy. Stuff gets out there so easily these days, and so you have to keep things under wraps. Did you even tell? I mean, were you allowed to tell people that you were working? I know, Amber, you told me, but.
Yeah, I think at a certain point, usually when the project is announced officially by the company, exactly. I think you can, but we always try to err on the careful side and just ask and be sure that we're not stepping on any toes.
I know lots of my friends working on any Avengers thing. Every time I'm like, oh, what are you working on right now? They're like, I can say. I know they're working on
and then you immediately
Avengers.
Know what it is. That's funny.
They can say, but honestly, I never had too much problems as long as it's been announced, as Neave said. Like the Smurf has been announced, so we asked before if we could say, like, you have to be careful. Yes, I saw people losing their job because they posted some animation before the release date of the TV series that they were working on, not movie, TV series. So it's a serious thing. You sign a document when you join the company, and it's an NDA. Yep. And you certify that you will not do that, and that person did it, and bye-bye. So I'm like, oh my God, you want to do things, you follow the rules for, if you want to keep your job, that's you sign the paper. So
all right, we got about 5 minutes. I'm going to do something silly, and I'm just going to rapid fire answer a few of these that I know the answers to really fast, and see if we can get through. We're not going to get through all of them, but I also want to do a nice little wrap up too. So Joe Sherry, do using light and other simulations count as AI? Yes. Other concepts, other different techniques in translating concept art to 3D, and what are the challenges? Software is always going to change. So what we teach at the school, and what you should know, is the art of it. And that's why I said about AI earlier, is you be an artist first and a technician first. The technology will come and go. It's too early to ask this. Do you have any ideas we'd like to do for a sequel? We don't get to decide what happens with the sequel. So it's too early. We'll never know until the producers let us know. Experience burnout while working on the film. Did you guys didn't, right? Not on this one, but it's a thing, but, or did you?
I did in the past, but it's getting better and better. Like I've been a long time in this industry. So at the beginning I did. Was hard, but now it's changing, so it's looking for the better.
Sure. And what about, how did you stay motivated? Were there shots, very quickly, like, just did you work on a shot that was dull, and how did you keep yourself from?
Yeah, you have to do it, and there's no other issue.
And you get paid too. I always tell people,
it's your job, right?
Yeah,
it's your job. So it's
part of the motivation is like you want to be professional and you want to be consistent, and
totally.
And also another motivation is your team, right? Because if you're not going to do it, then someone else is going to do it.
Definitely.
So you want to be a good team player, right? And when you have amazing teammates, then you kind of have that feeling all the time.
Yeah.
So just like,
and so also you're paid to animate, and so
great. It's
kind of cool. So
would you the question is do you have any tips about moving countries to work? But I guess the bigger question is, would you move to another country to work? Amber.
Oh my God, I moved I did move to the country. Yes, it's a wonder. Well, it's hard to answer this question because the world has changed, but I moved countries for work. I've been lucky enough to move from Belgium to London to Australia to New Zealand to Canada. I mean, because there was no remote work at that time, and I was looking for going into that company and have that experience. I don't know how the world is right now. I'm not at that time in my life, but I encourage my students all the time to go and move country. It's wonderful. It's part of the job. It's part of creating your network. Of course, you can do it from the comfort of your bedroom, but you know, we only have each other. So, and you know, talking to a colleague at the coffee machine about something else than animation as well, it creates, maybe you can meet your soulmate like I did. I met my husband this way. I met lots of friends. I don't know if I would have if I was just remote working. I don't know. I encourage you to do it. It's wonderful.
Yeah, I do too. We are running out of time. In fact, we are kind of out of time. So I'd like to finish up, first of all, by saying thank you so much for joining us today and sharing all this fascinating information.
Thank you.
I could listen to you guys all day. I just love hearing about this stuff. And I think everybody else could too. But all good things come to an end. I want to leave on a note of inspiration. Do you have any words of advice or anything that you could offer to students of animation, people who are interested and might want to do this themselves, or any thoughts, positive thoughts to send out into the ether as we say goodbye to this presentation? Either of you.
I'll say reach out, and I'll admit that you guys can reach out to me if you guys have any questions or stuff. But from my point of view, even when I was like a student and didn't know anyone and didn't work anywhere, most of the people that I'd reached out to for questions were like really, really open and receptive. Obviously, be professional and respectful, and be specific with your questions. Don't just be like, hey, how is it to be an animator? Like, you know, ask a specific question about them that interests you, whether kind of like Ambre said, like, if you want to know more about moving countries, and you can be like, hey, what was it like to move from Belgium to London? You know, like that's a big change, stuff like that. The community, from my point of view, is really, really open and kind. So like, I encourage you all to reach out and talk to people.
Yeah,
and my advice is don't let anybody tell you that you can do it. And
100%.
Because I had those during my life, especially being a woman. I can tell you I had some people putting me down. I don't want to say it, but it's the truth. It happened to me. So just follow your dream, work hard and be passionate and care about what you're doing, and it will show for sure.
Yeah. I agree 100%.
100%.
Yeah, and like Neave said, don't be a stranger. Feel free to reach out to us. I don't know if we're allowed to answer these questions later, but I'll take a look if we can. And thank you for the wonderful questions. And I'm sorry we didn't get to all of them.
For coming.
Yeah, but thank you, and for being such cool friends. And thanks again to Ambre and Neave for stopping by and filling us with all this stuff. And go see the movie. And check out cgspectrum.com.
Yeah, and thanks to Zoe and Penny in the background.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
For helping put this together.
Scott. Yeah.
My
Thanks,
pleasure.
Scott. I'm a big fan of yours. I am. Scott has an amazing career here.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I'm just watching all the thank yous burning up. I don't know if you guys could see that. It's just great to see all the love coming in for this thing. So I don't know if we're still alive or not. If we are still alive, we're going to just start singing.
I just wanted to say thank you to Neave as well. Neave, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
So speaking of reaching out, I just reached out to Ambre because she was like, hey, does anyone want to come talk about the movie? And I was like, yeah. And then I reached out to Scott and got to meet Zoe and Penny as well. So like, that's a prime example of that, right? Like,
I can't wait to work more with you and meet at a coffee machine and talk about everything.
When you're back from Spain.
Yes.
Coffee machine.
And when you're back from Portugal, we all need a break.
Yeah, for sure.